What's going on, guys, and welcome to season 1 episode 6 of my Grow Tent series. So in the last video, guys, we got the chance to explore tree pots, and I got to explain to you why the big time sellers, the big time growers, the big time players in this fig game are using that technique, and why moving forward that will be my go-to technique for propagating figs. We also went ahead and gave away some more cuttings. We did a cool live stream. Thank you for all those that participated. That was so much fun. I am so excited about episode 6 because we are finally gonna learn how to water our fig cuttings. This is probably the video that everyone wants to watch, so I appreciate you joining in. It's gonna be a long one, so make sure to stick around. There's a lot of tips and tricks I'm gonna show you guys to make sure you grow some healthy fig plants. So in this video, we're gonna explore rice water. We're gonna go ahead and show you what a saponin is. And then we're also gonna show you my go-to method for watering fig cuttings, and that's using compost tea. If this is your first time joining us, I'm Homer from Basement Figs, Illinois Zone 5B, and let's go water some plants. So let me show you how to make some compost tea. You can go ahead and buy one of these kits on Amazon or a hydroponic store. They're titled compost tea kits. There's different bundle sizes you can do. The bare minimum is a bucket, a bubbler wand, and a pump. Goes for about $80. So what I did was purchase the full kit. It was $120 on Amazon. Comes with a bucket, the snake wand, bubbler, a pump, whole bunch of other ingredients to go ahead and make the compost tea. You can go ahead and DIY this whole thing, but to me, it was just easier to go out and purchase it. That $120 is probably a steal in the sense of how much I actually use this kit. What I'll go ahead and do is I'll use this kit throughout the spring, the summer, the fall, maybe 3 times a week. And if you consider that for $120, that is a great value for me. Again, you can go ahead and make your own kit. Now that we got our equipment together, let's go ahead and discuss what compost tea really is. In its purest essence, you have a plant in a container, and we've been all taught throw some compost in the top layer, right? And then as we water it, as the compost breaks down, that watered down compost will get to the root system. We're just trying to speed up that process by doing a compost tea. So I graduated from KISS University. Keep it simple, stupid. And I'm gonna go ahead and try to explain to you what compost tea really is. And the simplest explanation is to really understand compost and why gardeners use compost. Compost has 2 really good things going for it. First, it has a lot of nutrients, and number 2, it has a lot of beneficial bacteria. Those 2 things go hand in hand when we're feeding our plants. So let's go talk about these beneficial bacteria and why we want them in our garden. There's this symbiotic relationship that happens between these bacteria and these roots, and these bacteria will help these roots of our plants take up more nutrients a lot quicker. So now that we understand compost and bacteria and that symbiotic relationship between the plant and the roots and the bacteria, let's go ahead and understand compost tea. What compost tea really is just adding oxygen to our bucket for 2 reasons. Number 1, that oxygen will help promote beneficial bacteria rather than pathogens. The higher quality compost we use, the higher quality compost tea we will have. Number 2 reason why we add the oxygen or the air is we have this bucket where we're bubbling and aerating, and we have our media, which is consisting of compost, worm castings, and any other additives that you want to add. So what happens here is the air will bubble, agitate the mesh bag that's containing your compost, and shake off the bacteria into the water source. Once the bacteria is in the water source, when we water our plants, the bacteria, the nutrition hits our roots a lot quicker. I'm a huge believer in water, air, and organics. And this just nails it all for me. So what I'll do right now is I'll go ahead and teach you guys how to make compost tea. The first thing we want to do is we want to make sure our water source does not have any chlorine in it. Again, we're trying to grow bacteria. We're trying to multiply bacteria here, and having chlorine in that water will just kill off the bacteria that we're trying to grow. Let's go ahead and start with this bucket. I'm going to go ahead and fill it up, and then I'll show you the rest. Got my hose here. Just going to fill it up. Guys, if you ever have a grow room or a greenhouse and it doesn't have a faucet or like a plumbing to run a garden hose, get it done. In my basement here, I had a plumber come in, install the pipes and a faucet so I can run a garden hose down here, and it's been a lifesaver. Having access to water whenever you need it is such a game changer. So does the water need to be a specific temperature? Not really, but I highly recommend it to be at least room temperature, just so that you're not shocking your plants when you water them. As I'm filling up this bucket, what you want to do is understand what's going to happen here. This bucket is going to be bubbling, it's going to be frothy. You really don't want to put too much water. You want to plan out for that froth that's going to happen, or you're just going to have a really hot, stinking mess. So I probably do it about 75% to 80% of the container size. The water that we added here from that garden hose obviously is from the tap water. It's going to have chlorine, and it's going to have all the chemicals in here that's designed to kill any bacteria so that we can drink it, right? What we want to do is we want to neutralize that, and there's two ways you can do that. You can go ahead and add a Dechlorinating additive to this and get the chlorine out that way, or what you can do is just take your snake wand here. These bubblers like to move around, so I just kind of kink my hose in place like so. And then again, this kit comes with the air pump that you need. Comes with a hose, so just straight out of the box, right away be able to use it. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and plug this in, and then I'll give you guys a close-up of this bucket. So let me go ahead and drop some more KISS knowledge on you guys. The reason we want to go ahead and bubble this water for about 24 hours is we want to get that chlorine out of this water source. So what's happening here is you have these chlorine molecules, and when you make these air bubbles, these chlorine molecules attach to the air bubbles, and as they move their way up to the bucket and pop, the chlorine gets dispersed into the air. We'll be back in about 24 hours and finish off this compost tea. So now that our water has been bubbling for about 24 hours and now is dechlorinated, what we're going to go ahead and do is actually make the compost tea. Alright guys, so here's some more KISS knowledge for you. So the compost tea is made up of two basic things, compost and worm castings. The reason we want compost obviously is for the nutrients and the bacteria. Compost is primarily going to have the macronutrients that we're looking for, and that's our NPK, our nitrogen, our phosphorus, and our potassium. The reason we want worm castings is because that's going to add the micronutrients for our plants. The micronutrients are like boron, magnesium, zinc, copper, iron, all of those stuff that our plant needs to grow nice and healthy. The kit that I bought also comes with one of these mesh bags, and my formula for making my compost tea is I just take 2 cups of compost, 2 cups of worm castings, and then I'll put it in this mesh bag. What's really cool about compost tea is once you get the base down, the compost and the worm castings, you can go ahead and supercharge your compost tea with a whole bunch of different ingredients. Another amazing benefit of compost tea is you can really hone in on whatever stage of your plant growth you're at. If you're in the growing phase, just go ahead and add more nitrogen to the compost mix. If you're in the fruiting phase, go ahead and add more phosphorus, and if you're focusing on rooting phase, which we are, we'll go ahead and add more potassium. In future videos, I'll go ahead and mix a whole bunch of different compost tea, but in this video, I'm going to use a product called Craft Blend. I buy this at a hydroponic store from a company called Build a Soil. I'll go ahead and list all the ingredients in it, but it really has a lot of stuff that we're looking for. So the main reason that I use Craft Blend is because it has kelp meal. Kelp meal is really amazing for developing strong roots in our cuttings. So here is the Craft Blend. It's just a whole bunch of organic materials that's grinded up, milled. We need a food source for the bacteria to eat. They're gonna eat some of the compost that's in here. They're gonna eat some of the worm castings that are in here. But what we're also trying to do is trying to supercharge this compost tea with this Craft Blend. So I'll go ahead and add this to this mesh. It has a buckle. So all you do is you buckle it in like so. Has one of these clips, and all I'm gonna do is submerge this mesh bag in here. You can see the compost, the worm castings, and then the Craft Blend on top. One of the key things that people generally forget when they're making compost tea is you need a sugar source to help that bacteria multiply. The sugar source that I use is a food grade molasses. You can go ahead and use plain granular sugar, but what you really want is a liquid based sugar source. It's going to help dissolve in the water a lot quicker. You can go ahead and purchase a food grade molasses at a grocery store. I just went ahead and purchased this on Amazon. So we have about 4.5 gallons of water in here. Just gonna take a shot glass. Gonna get this really thick molasses. So we have our molasses here. We're gonna go ahead and pour it into our bucket here. I'm gonna go ahead and speed this process up. Again, I don't normally use a shot glass anymore, but when I first started learning, I did. So just getting that molasses in there. So when do I use a compost tea? Pretty much anytime I want to feed the plants. This is 100% the most organic way to fertilize and feed your plants. Anytime my plants are struggling, before I go ahead and start freaking out, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and brew a compost tea, give it a good drink in compost tea, and you'll see that a lot of the times the plants just respond really positively to this compost tea. Again, I don't want to get into the crazy science of compost tea. Just understand this. There is this amazing relationship between bacteria and plant roots. They've been studying it for years, and those guys have been doing it as well. They know the secrets in producing high-end product, and that's my goal here too, is to produce high-end fig plants that produce high-end fruit. Now that we got all the ingredients into our compost tea and it's ready to brew, how long do we brew it for? The general guideline to brewing compost tea is we want to have it bubbling for at least 12 hours before we use it, to a maximum of 36 hours. So after the 36 hours, what happens is there becomes a diminishing return on the bacteria. The bacteria just starts to die off, and we lose the potential power of the super juice. All right, guys, so let's bubble this up, and then we'll come back and we'll go actually use this and water some of our cuttings that are growing right now. Here is the compost tea. It's been over 24 hours. As you can see, it's been frothing, bubbling, turning into this really hot, stinking mess that is just gonna be fuel for our plants to explode in the grow tent. Let me give you guys a close-up and you guys can see what it's looking like. So now that I got the compost tea done here, I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect this hose, take my snake bubble wand out. Take my clip off here. Here's one of the most amazing things about compost tea. You went ahead and made this awesome liquid, but you also have this amazing top dress. This stuff here, guys, is the most amazing thing you can top dress your plants with. It's just compost, worm castings, craft blend, just everything to keep your plants going throughout the growing season. It's winter here, but I'm gonna go ahead and top dress my plants with it, and I'll utilize it throughout the springtime and summertime. But it's pretty nasty. Now that we've brewed our compost tea, you might be asking yourself, do I really need to do this? And my answer to you guys is yes. If you're really serious about growing fig plants and growing some amazing fruit, you're gonna dive down in this world of compost tea sooner than later. And I'm here to tell you, why not do it now? What's really amazing about compost tea is it's 100% organic. The main concern with fig cuttings is they're really sensitive roots. You don't have to worry about burning roots with compost tea. It's been 1 week since I started feeding my cuttings with compost tea, and as you can see, my plants are starting to rage. They're off to a great start, and that's all we can ask for. So again, I highly recommend getting into compost tea. It's really one of the key secrets in my success. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and teach you guys how to water your plants. So we made it this far, and how exciting is that? We got our fig cuttings to actually root and now are ready for watering. This is probably the hardest part of the fig game, or gardening in general, is learning how to water and how much to water. So before I get started, let me tell you how I struggled with gardening when I first started off. Watering was really a struggle for me. I'm the type of individual that just wants to be really hands-on all the time. And I'm here to tell you from my experience, don't. Take your time and be very patient. The rule that I follow is this 10% rule. Every time I water the plants, I try to make sure that the container has 10% more moisture than it had when I started. What's even better is if you follow the 5-10 rule. What that means is you add 5% slowly until you get to the 10%. We want to make sure our plants are always utilizing that water. We don't want these roots sitting in wet media for too long. So how do we learn how to water our plants? Let me go ahead and teach you what I know. So now that we got some roots growing in our cup here, how do we know when to water or if it's even ready for water? I really like these solo cups or these clear containers for beginners just because we can go ahead and see what's going on below the soil line. As you can see, this plant here has a lot of roots developed. You might go ahead and think that this plant needs water right now, but I'm here to tell you it doesn't. And how do I know that? Just because I can see through this cup, I can see all of these water droplets around the cup, and because this plant has a lid, I can see the condensation that's happening on the top of the lid as well. So this is a perfect example of a cutting that is not ready for water yet. Again, I don't know if you guys can see it, but you can see all the water droplets still on the side of this cup. So you guys might be asking yourselves, what do you do when you can't see through the container? How do you know when the plant is ready to be watered? And my answer to that is simply by weight. You can go ahead and lift some of your containers up. You can feel how light it is, and it's an indication that the plant could use some water. For the sake of this video and learning purposes, I went ahead and pulled out my scale, and we're gonna do this more scientifically. We're gonna go actually weigh our plants to determine if they need watering. So what I have here is a plain solo cup just filled with our field capacity potting mix. Again, this is the HP Pro Mix with the perlite at field capacity. And if I put it on my scale, it's measuring 8.3 ounces. So that's gonna be our guideline for majority of these plants in the same container size. So the first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and weigh this plant, and see how much it weighs. And this is at 6.7 ounces. Let's go ahead and try to bring this up to our 8.3 or follow our 10% rule. If you guys didn't brew any compost tea, no sweat. What do I actually water my plants with if I didn't have compost tea? I think the best thing to water your plants with is rice water. Rice water is just simply rice that you clean off and the liquid that's left over. As you can see, a lot of the sediment down here and below has a lot of nutrition that's going to help our early plants. And we don't have to really worry about this stuff burning our roots. And then as we mix it, we get all of that sediment suspended into the water. So before we actually water our plants, I want to talk to you guys about a product that really helped me out. Again, watering was really a struggle for me, and I found this product. It's called a Quillaja extract powder. What it really is a saponin. And what a saponin is the sap of the specific plant. And what a saponin does, or a wetting agent does, it helps the water kind of foam up, be bubbly and soapy. When we water a plant that's dried out, it has a tendency to be hydrophobic, which means it wants to repel water. What a saponin does, it will evenly spread the water throughout the soil line as it moves its way down, giving us a nice, more even coverage. For those people that are really struggling with watering and learning how to water, I highly recommend getting a saponin or a wetting agent. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put some of the saponin or wetting agent into our rice water here. You can go ahead and follow the instructions. All I do is I do a light sprinkle. A little goes a long way. And then all I do is I go ahead and stir it, and you'll see it starts to foam up. So once I'm done mixing it in, we'll go ahead and start watering some of our plants here. If you followed my live stream, I went ahead and started using a syringe. Last year I didn't use one. You can go ahead and water these containers just with a cup or a bottle, but I found the syringe to be really helpful. What's really nice about this syringe here, it has metrics on it. It has a side for ounces here. And again, if we're following our 10% rule, this will help us water. So these solo cups are 20 ounces. So if we're following our 10% rule, that's 2 ounces. But again, if we're following our 5-10 rule, 5% of that would be 1 ounce. So what we're going to go ahead and do is water this plant with 1 ounce and then go ahead and measure it. So we'll go ahead and measure this plant. So this container again is coming at 6.2. We want to get to about 8.3, but following our 5-10 rule. So I'm going to take my rice water and I'm going to put 1 ounce, which is 5% of the container size, and water this cutting with it. And all I do is I just water around the plants. You can see how hydrophobic the soil media is. It's going to actually take some time to run through. And my scale right now is coming at 7.2. If you guys don't have a scale, what I highly suggest doing is following that 5% rule. You can go ahead and do another 5% tomorrow and get it to the level where we want it to be. 1 ounce brought this up to 7.2. So we're going to go ahead and do another ounce. So let me give you a close-up of how I'm watering the plant. So I have my rice water with a saponin all nice and foamy. I have my cutting here. And all I do is I just go ahead and push down on the syringe and let that rice water run down the sides of the plant. This container now has 2 ounces of that rice water. Let's go ahead and measure it. And now it's at 8.2, so I'm fine with that. We'll go ahead and measure this one. This one is coming at 6.8. So I'll go ahead and water it with 1 ounce. Let me go ahead and show you a close-up of this. I got my syringe here with rice water with a sapidin. It's nice and foamy. All I do is I go ahead and squeeze down on the syringe, and I kind of just water around the cutting on the edges, and I also kind of tilt it. All I'm trying to do is avoid too much moisture on that fig cutting itself. So there we go, we got 1 ounce of rice water in this container. Let's go ahead and measure it. So now it's at 7.7. We'll go ahead and add half an ounce. Measure it again. And awesome, it's at 8.2. So now that we watered our fig cuttings with rice water, what we can go ahead and do is we can actually supercharge this rice water by adding fish fertilizer. Fish fertilizer is really good also for developing root system, and it's not so strong that it's actually gonna burn the roots, but you still want to use some precaution. The brand of fish fertilizer I use is called Alaskan fish fertilizer. You can go ahead and buy this at any hardware store, or you can go ahead and actually buy this on Amazon. Besides being really great for early plant growth, fish fertilizer is actually really great for transplant shops. We're going to be using this stuff throughout the growing season, especially once we start to up-pot our plants into bigger containers. Again, my go-to is the compost tea, so we're going to go ahead and start using compost tea and water the rest of these plants. So here we have our compost tea all nice and brewed up. We went ahead and add the sapidin. It's nice and foamy. We're going to go ahead and water the remaining cuttings with this compost tea. So we have another plant here that's still in its container with its lid that needs to be watered. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and remove the lid now. The lid has served its purpose. It kept the moisture in there while our plants rooted. And all I do is just carefully take it off. Just going to cut it with some scissors and just peel away. So now that we got our plant with the lid off, we'll go ahead and measure it. It's coming in 9.1, and this is one of the benefits of having a scale. I was about to water this plant, and the scale is telling me it's 9.1. I'm going to go ahead and pass and not water this plant today. All right, so here's another plant with its lid. Really highly developed roots. I can see it. I can feel it. It's really light. I know this is going to be ready for water. We're going to go ahead and remove the lid. And then all you do is just cut it and gently remove it. Like so. Some of you guys out there might be going, hey Homer, why do I really need to remove these lids? And let me go ahead and tell you the reason why. The lids are really great in keeping the moisture in when we're growing the roots so that we don't have to water our containers while we're trying to root our fig cuttings. Once they have established and started rooting, what we want to do is we want to make sure when we water, we want that soil media to dry out at some point, giving the roots the chance to breathe. Again, our goal isn't to drown our fig cuttings and its roots with water. What we're trying to do is just give the plants enough water that they utilize and grow into really healthy plants. We'll go ahead and measure this container now. It's coming at 6.8, so we'll go ahead and water it. I have my syringe. So here is my syringe with my compost tea. and nice and foamy from the sapidin. I have my plant. Roots are really raging on me. I'm gonna go ahead and water it. Again, I just try to focus on the sides of the plant, trying to really avoid the cutting itself. And then we'll go ahead and measure it again. It's at 7.8. What we'll go ahead and do is we'll go ahead and add half an ounce. And now it's at 8.3. What's gonna happen is that compost tea with the sapidin is slowly making its way down this container. If we didn't have the sapidin, the possibility of it running down, straight down and flushing out is a lot higher. So again, if you're struggling with watering, struggling with plants, and if you just don't have a green thumb, the sapidin is just an extra tool to make this a lot easier for us. Again, I'll go ahead and put this back in the grow tent. All right guys, so I'll just keep plugging away here. It's coming at 7.9. I'm not gonna go ahead and water it, and I'll go ahead and check it tomorrow. Here we have a Campaneri. If you watch the live stream, this is the one that actually had the figlets that we removed. The leaves were very deformed. It's starting to bounce back really well. Let me give you guys a close-up. This is the Campaneri from the live stream. You can see the roots are really developed now. The small leaves that were deformed quadrupled in size, developed more leaves, putting off more shoots, really heading in the right direction. What we're gonna go ahead and do is feed it with some compost tea. We'll go ahead and weigh it. Being that it's a see-through cup, I can see how developed the roots are. It's feeling a little light to me. This plant will be able to drink this up really fast. And then we'll go ahead and put this back in the tent. So we got these big boy containers. I thought by weight it was ready for water. And again, this is one of the really great benefits of having containers see-through. Let me go ahead and show you what I see here. If you see really closely, it has a lot of roots developed. It's doing really well, but I also see a lot of water droplets. Again, that's just a really good indication that this plant doesn't need water yet. Pretty soon, but for now, we're not gonna go ahead and water this. So we have the Chicago Hardy. It's fully raging on us. Let's go ahead and weigh it and see where it's coming at. It's coming at 8.1, but here's the tricky part with the scale. It has a lot of top growth now, but I can feel it. Again, this is where experience and practice comes into play. I can feel this plant. I can see the roots. I know it needs water. So we're gonna go ahead and water it. But instead of doing the 10% rule, we'll go ahead and play it a little bit safe and just do 5%, which would be 1 ounce. And just like the other plants, I'll go ahead and tilt it and try to water on the edges. And there we go. Here's another Chicago Hardy. We'll go ahead and weigh it out. It's coming at 7.5 ounces. I'll go ahead and water it another ounce. And then we'll go ahead and measure it one more time. And it's at 8.4. So I'm happy with that. So we have another plant here with a lid. We'll go ahead and remove it. We'll go ahead and weigh it. It's coming in at 7.2. So what I'll go ahead and do is water it with 1 ounce of this compost tea. Weigh it again, and now it's at 8.2. And then we have our trophy cutting here. This is our Chicago Hardy, our first one to root this season. So this one's really special to me. It's actually raging, growing really big here. We're gonna go ahead and weigh it. It's coming at 8.2. Just like the other example, this is a big cutting, lots of top growth on it. I can feel it with just experience. I know it needs some water. Another indication that your plant could use some nutrients is some yellowing around the leaves. So what we'll go ahead and do is just water this with 1 ounce. This is the same Chicago Hardy, but let's take a closer look. You can actually see the leaf tip. You see the yellowing of the leaf tips like I mentioned, and that's just an indication again that this plant is really ready for nutrients. This plant here is really outgrowing its container. It's really ready for an up pot. Once we go ahead and start feeding this plant with more compost tea, you're going to actually see the yellowing of these leaves correct itself as the plant gets the proper nutrients it needs. Again, compost tea is really amazing. I'm actually kind of nervous how my tent is gonna explode in the next several weeks here. I just don't know where all these plants are gonna go. So that reminds me, I still have several bundles to give away. Let's go ahead and do this early bird special. The first person that watches this segment, go ahead and comment number 8, and I'll go ahead and send you another bundle. All I ask is if you won before, go ahead and give other people a chance to win. Just like that, we'll weigh it again. So 9.2 ounces makes sense. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put this in the grow tent. So that was a couple examples on how to water your fig cuttings. Again, last year I didn't use a scale. Last year I didn't use a syringe. But let me go ahead and say this. These two things really made this experience a lot easier. The peace of mind knowing that I watered my plants correctly is just awesome. So I highly suggest giving the syringe and the scale technique a try. I hope you guys really learned something in this video. I hope this really inspired you to give compost tea a try. So again guys, if you really enjoyed this video, enjoyed the content, really inspired you to go ahead and try compost tea, and you want to go ahead and purchase a compost tea kit, in the description below I went ahead and put a link to Amazon. When you go ahead and click that link and make a purchase, you go ahead and support me, so I totally appreciate that. Again, my name is Homer from Basement Figs, Illinois Zone 5B. Happy New Year's. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.